Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 545 of Constructive Criticism. I'm joined by my co-host, the man who won the hardest RCQ that he could have to qualify, Abe Stein.
I'm on what I'm calling now the new version of the train. There's one other friend locally. Yeah. There's one other friend locally. His name's Andy Vorel. He actually top forward the modern one in Denver with creativity last year. But he never wins RCQs locally, and he's just been chaining invites from like SCG cons, RCs, and like this one he played Jun Creativity and top 128 and queued again. But so it's just like being on the train, man. You just got to make it another way around. Last time I got my 2 qualifications, both the RC too. So
I call him the king of coverage, and there's no surprise that he and Carmen had some chemistry. Mason Clark.
Hey, how you doing?
Dude, do you know how many people messaged me about you? At least
2.
3. Oh, you were so close.
I was.
They were like, why is Mason so good with Carmen? I was like, didn't know each other for a long time. They're like really good friends. Like, it was a good pairing.
Also, we practiced a bunch, you know? Like,
Did
we
you
put
really?
A lot of, we put a lot of work into that show. We practiced transitioning, we practiced passing the mic, we practiced like who would be which role, we practiced doing ad reads, we practiced like how to best like segue and like go over sideboarding. I mean, we probably put, I don't know, 10 to 20 hours in.
I love
just
that.
Just the week leading up to the RC, not counting like other stuff.
People always find it weird that I'm like friends with a bunch of my ex-girlfriends, and I'm like, why aren't you? Like, what did you do to your ex-girlfriend where you're not like homies? I don't know. You guys were great together.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. And the community was too. They messaged me. They're like, Mason was so good this weekend. Did you know that he's your co-host? And I was like, I do know that. And I also think that Mason was great. Abe, have you watched your match that Mason covered?
I didn't cover your match.
Mason didn't cover it. So Mason didn't cover it, so I have not watched it yet.
Oh, is that why you haven't watched it?
I haven't watched it because all I've done since I got home from Portland at like 9 p.m. last night is like lie in bed and sleep, and also my foot hurts. So
I watched you win game 2, and then I like walked away because like we were getting food for the
I
Super
did not
Bowl.
win game 2. I won game 1, and they
Oh, was that game 1?
Yeah, I won game 1. They cut out game 2, and then I lost game 3. I lost both. In game 2, I had a pretty I don't know. I'm not gonna get into it, but apparently I should have played Thundering Falls instead of Hedge Mace, and it mattered, I guess.
We'll talk about that.
Only on top of my deck. But
We'll talk about that later. We are going to get into RC Portland. That is the topic of this week's podcast. And, in all honesty, we were all in the same room, at least 15 feet away from each other at one point. That did happen. For the first time in history.
It is the closest all of us have been, not including large photos of Mason.
Yeah. I want to give Mason the front row because Mason, you actually gave up your qualification to do coverage. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. Like, one of your goals is to like do Pro Tour coverage one day. You really love it, and I respect that. Like, that's a big thing. Like, you could do well at these events if you wanted to, and you decided to do coverage instead. Can I ask, like, what you would have played had you played the tournament?
For the, banging the drum on the podcast for the 19th week in a row, pick up the breach card, play the broken deck, be on the right side of history. I say these things in the podcast and I mean them, and I don't know how to get it across to people more. I don't know. Like, Abe, you and I talked once about, like, what to do, and I was just like, man, you should just play the breach cards. They're just really good.
I love that I made that decision in the end too.
Yeah,
I gotta say.
Abe, if I can leak DMs for a second, not to steal part of your story, but on Friday, I think I got a message from Abe that was like, I can't believe I considered playing anything else for this tournament or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Is that leaking DMs? Abe and I also texted, and he was like, "I'm trying everything but breach." I was like, why? I think that's what I said.
I did feel like it was a good. I felt very well prepared for the event by doing that. I will say. I did just play Breach, and it was very good, though. I think that Mason is correct for saying that, and I also, even though I wish I was maybe wrong, I'm feeling correct for having registered it as well.
Abe and I had some pretty good conversations before it, but like, Abe, you did end up on Breach. How did that happen?
So it happened in a kind of unceremonious way. I don't know. I played everything else, and I was working through a league of black white to be like, okay, this is the last thing I'm checking off my list of like, let's get the vibes. And honestly, I've been like winning the most with like Boros and Eldrazi, but I just like knew the Breach deck was the best. It was very clearly to me the best. It seemed like it had the most game against everything, and like remained really good. So I kind of started spending time like working on rounding out my understanding of the rest of the format, so I didn't know how to play against it and what really mattered, and also get an understanding of what the hands those decks would be keeping would be, and kind of what might change there. And then I was trying to settle on a 75. I didn't really have time to refine one myself, so I did actually wind up going to the Systematic stream, and I wound up giving them $10 over their Patreon to get their deck list and sideboard guide. I talked with a couple of my friends about how they were building the deck. I made one switch thanks to a conversation I had with Jarvis about playing Lightning Bolt versus Unholy Heat, and I did like the look of a Lightning Bolt, and I thought about a little bit of the like Karn versus a Lightning Bolt and Unholy Heat. They like, if you have two of one or one of the other, they can kind of just like split one the other way. Like they have a plus up to 6 if you have two Lightning Bolts, and then they can minus and get Tormod Script if you have Unholy Heat and no pressure. So like that was the only change I made, and then
It's not
it wasn't really until
right? Like you can actually just win the game off of it.
Yeah, it came up for a couple of players to be able to do that, but really it never came up for me. I was able to. I was able to like kill Cameo on turn 1.
Yes.
Plenty of times.
I just want to mention that it exists. Like if you make that split.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. There is other upside to having Lightning Bolt for sure. But yeah, really, I felt kind of unconfident and a bit shaky on my decision until Thursday night when I'd gotten in. I'd like slept for 2 hours on the plane because my phone died, and then couldn't sleep at the Airbnb, and so I was just goldfishing the deck that I'd put together, and like at that point it started to click of like, and that's why I texted Mason. I was like, oh my god, like the deck is actually like broken if I understand that I need to mulligan in this way, or like keep hands that do this, and that these are the things that matter, and I need to stop thinking about it like kind of my old priors of playing the Urza decks of like having these explosive turn 1s that develop your board, and really just thinking about playing it like a combo deck, and like casting Malevolent Rumble on 2 leads to like a turn 3 kill a huge amount of the time if you already have Underworld Breach, things like that. So yeah, I mean that's how I came to it. I also felt like it would be ridiculous not to play it, because it felt like every other deck I was looking at or talking to people about were like taking a bunch of different steps to try to beat it, and weren't certain that those were even going to be enough. And so if I was going to do anything else, I mean, it felt worse than Breach. So
yeah, I mean, I went the other direction. I played Eldrazi because I believed that it was the worst matchup for Breach. I believed that Breach would be the most played deck, and yeah, I don't regret my decision, other than something we'll get into later. But like, I played 3 Karns. Every Breach player I talked to, I did not play against any, but every Breach player I talked to was like, yeah, this is my worst matchup. Like, it's really hard, but here's how I win it. And like they had plans, but I don't know. I did not like this format, and we'll probably talk about it. Like, I want to ask Mason, like you and Abe, you both were like best deck gamers on this one. Why were you that way, Mason, going into it?
I mean, I feel a couple ways about it. One, I just like my philosophy has been and has like really morphed into if my goal is to make the Pro Tour for an event above all else / win the event, I should play whatever I think is best. And my goals can change from there. So for example, like with the Spotlight, I would have played Esper or Gruul in the week leading up to it in Atlanta, but I just was sick to the point where I almost thought I wasn't even going. Right. Like I think I missed that week's podcast episode because I was like, I mean, to be really honest, I remember crying and coughing on one of the days for like 12 hours straight because I just like could barely breathe, you know? And it was just like one of the more painful days of my life. And so I didn't get to switch, and I went, had a deck that I thought was like one of the best decks in standard, and the power level felt very flat. And then I could feel things shifting, but I just didn't have time to like get the cards and get sideboard plans. So like when I got up on Friday and it was like I can actually go, it was like, okay, well, I have to like go and I can't really change decks. So that is to simply say that like when I think there is a format with top decks and my goal is to win, I want to pick whatever deck I think is the best. I think lots of times there are a couple decks that are the same power level, and it was pretty clear to me from preparing for the event, just from the coverage perspective, that Breach was the best deck. It wasn't particularly close, in my opinion. I think the other three decks that are the top decks are quite good, and for what it's worth, in my opinion, that is Energy variants, Eldrazi variants, and then Solitude variants. And Solitude variants getting a lot of equity versus the rest of the field. I felt like those four decks are all good, and the other three decks weren't like, if we were playing a team tournament, for example, I wouldn't be super mad at you, but it was just not nearly as good as the deck that's like, in my opinion, was pretty clearly going to catch a ban, unless like I was so totally wrong. And, I wanted to play the deck that when I look back on things, I was playing the deck that I felt confident was going to get banned. The same way I played Nadu in tournaments, because I felt it was the best deck by a lot, and my goal is to win. So when I suggested other people, and I, helped a lot of people in coaching with Breach because I thought it was the best by a lot, and I think not playing it is going to lead to some regrets for people whose main goal was making it to the Pro Tour.
I love that. I'm going to just talk about Eldrazi for a second, because I had my worst event of all time. Just won't bury the lead on this, but like, almost all of my matches went to game 3. I was also ahead in almost all my matches, and it was really funny. I felt like this deck was really good. So the reason that I played it is because I felt like turn 2 Karn was the best thing to do in Modern. And then also I felt like Kozilek's Command was the best card in Modern. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm not going to play the deck that I believe is the best deck, I'm going to play the best start and the best card. Never got to play against the decks that I wanted to play. In fact, I actually played against a Burn Run 2, which I believe is... Abe... I told Abe, I was like, hey, if you... This is a funny story. I was like, hey, Abe, sure, you have someone who's not on your sideboard guide. He's like, how far is your sideboard guide? I was like, 13 decks. I overdid it. He's like, Eldrazi seems like the deck that you want to do. I was like, it was Burn. He's like, not the one you'd want to hit. He's like, nope, not that one. Like, that's not the one. My opponent was also a Burn expert. They did not miss sequence to lose the game in game 3, because that is where it went. I don't know. I don't hate my decision, but I would make a different one that we'll talk about in the Patreon only podcast. I think Eldrazi was really good. Like, legitimately really good. I have to look at the numbers, but I do believe it did have a positive Breach matchup. Somebody can check me on that while I'm talking.
I think it was just barely. For what it's worth, I think Eldrazi is definitely better than Energy.
Yeah,
like personally.
So my highest win percentage was with Energy, to Mason's point. Like, by a lot. I think I 4-1'd every league I played with that deck, and I was like, this deck is bad. Like, I'm gonna lose if I play. Like, there's no way. And I'm kind of proud of myself for not playing it. Because I was confident that I was going to lose if I played Energy. Like, I mean, obviously I did lose and I played a different deck, but like, it would have been rough for me, I think. I had 3 good matchups in my 4 matchups that I did play on my own for. And, I went. All of my matches were really close. I got unlucky a couple times, and honestly, like, I think Eldrazi's not done. Like, I think that there's some juice there that we don't know yet, but we'll see. Abe, obviously, why did you play the best deck?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of already got into how I wound up making that decision, but I mean, in a little bit more detail, I felt like, as it was coming down to it, because I could have still chosen to play something else, and Boros was still kind of on my radar as a deck that maybe is still just coin flipping against everything, and will at least feel like really comfortable to play. And I'd had success with online was that Breach. I would have time to focus on content, kind of understand what maybe I was doing wrong in my own intuition. Playing Breach, I was able to spend the time to read the tournament report and deck guide by the player who won the European RC. Like I said, I was able to get the Systemagic sideboard guide, and also was able to spend time. I just sat down and watched something I haven't done been able to do really in a while. Just sat down and just like watch a few like streams and videos of like people playing the deck and talking through their decisions to understand maybe some of the areas I was doing things differently than people who were having more success than me. And so that's how I really came to be playing Breach. I mean, like Mason said, I think it is the best deck. And I also think that if I'm trying to qualify for the Pro Tour, I mean, thinking back at every time I've qualified for the Pro Tour, the way I did it was I played the best deck in the format, and I managed to play it very well. Like those 2 things together led to me qualifying pretty consistently. I don't think there's been a time where I've played the best deck especially well at like large tournaments and not had success. And this was no different. I went up being 1 win short of the PT. There's like, I think 2 matches I can think of that I played where I could have turned those into wins maybe, or at least had an opportunity to extend them had I played just a little bit better. And that's, a great takeaway of like, focus on the little things and technical play and get more familiar. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how Charlotte looks, just because I think the cat's out of the bag now, right? Like before this event, right, the weekend before this, the narrative was like, oh, Oculus is not a playable deck, really. It's not in the same tier that everyone thought it was. No one to be registering it. I think that a lot of the decks that, beneath Breach, that in the 2nd and 3rd tier kind of started to perform better. I mean, looking at like Amulet Titan, looking at some of the various other combo that was previously held down by a deck like Oculus, those decks started to rise. And I think that now that it's like, okay, well, if Boros isn't really pulling its weight in the format either, what does the format look like now without maybe, with either Boros players condensing to plans that actually work, if there are any, or, just the changes with the knowledge that really turn 3 combo decks are like a turn 3 combo deck that's resilient is the best deck in the format, and being able to turn 3 people with resiliency is like the number one thing. I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
I'll jump into like why I played, like why I played Eldrazi in a lot of ways. So like Dimir was your worst matchup. Like it was not good, and knowing that people were gonna move off of it because of the data and move on to like decks like Boros, like other fair decks that were good matchups for you, including black white. Like, I don't know, it really enticed me.
Would it surprise you to learn that your Breach matchup, according to the data we have here, is worse than your Murktide matchup by a lot?
That would surprise. I mean, I haven't seen that yet. Is that true?
Yeah. So Eldrazi has a 43% win rate against Grinding Station and has a 54% win rate against Murktide.
Wait, hold on. Repeat that.
So Eldrazi Ramp, if I'm reading this correctly, has a 43% win rate against Grinding Station. It is down 7%.
That one surprises me. It was supposed to be the worst matchup for.
Yeah, I think in reality it wasn't. But well, it is the worst. But it's like one of the
it's the worst and it's still good. Okay.
Also they came more prepared. And then the Murktide matchup is 54% win rate for Eldrazi Ramp.
Wait, so
just for the record, if you combine both America and Europeans RC data, I did the numbers with Nick. We ultimately decided not to talk about coverage, but I believe the number was like 223 or 225, something like that. Players played it across our 2 regional championships.
But for
Europe and America, for both. And then of that, I believe it was 15 people totally converted, or 14 people total conversion
for Oculus.
For Oculus, yeah.
Okay.
It is one of the worst Magic decks performance-wise in history.
Yeah, so that is actually one of the reasons that I picked my deck. I was like, well, my worst matchup, according to like my testing and the data before this, like, it's not a deck. Like, people can't play it. All right, I don't know what to say. So should we talk about our thoughts going into Charlotte? Because I have a lot, but I want AB to go first as the man on a mission that has qualified again.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are that I think there's some Aether Drift cards that could change things a bit. I think that it's going to be interesting now being in a world that, like I said, a month from now is going to be hard not to acknowledge in the same way the power of the Breach deck, and seeing kind of right now we're very clearly like, you know, Canary in the Coal Mine has tipped over and died. So what are we doing now in this land where it's like, okay, we need to beat Breach. What are the stupid things we can do in our deck to make sure we beat Breach? Right? Things that make no sense on paper, but because of the presence of Breach, how do we beat Breach? When players start thinking like that and making decisions like that, I think it's going to make the format pretty, at least I think it could make the format pretty different. You know, I'm not certain exactly how that'll mean the Breach players need to respond. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Breach stays a step ahead and see how committed kind of the same players are, especially with the PT kind of lying right between both. I think there's going to be a lot of divide of attention and work put into the decks. And so, you know, I mean, really going into Charlotte, what I expect to see is that more of these decks that did not perform well, decks like Energy, which kind of felt like they maybe only had an Eldrazi matchup problem that now are forced to reckon the fact they have a whole format problem. And similarly, like, I mean, decks like Samwise combo, or other combo decks, or like the Amulet Titan, right? Decks like those that now have additional resurgence of like, hey, we're decks that can play through the kind of disruption that that the Breach deck can play, and are difficult to disrupt on our own, require an entirely different swath of hate than the everything bagel of the Breach deck, where, you know, we're not an artifact deck really, or an enchantment deck really, or a graveyard deck really, but we still have these big combos. What those are going to see as far as play rates and how that's going to affect the metagame, I think there's a lot that can still happen. But I think it's like pretty far too soon to tell. And honestly, I think it's going to be the onus put on those decks which are starting from a leg down, right? They're just not as powerful or as good as the Breach deck inherently. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Breach adapts to their presence or how their presence is felt, and seeing how the metagame continues to move forward. And I think week over week, I mean, looking at the results in Europe and in Canada, and then looking at the results this week, and then looking at the results in whatever the next round of RCs are. I think there's one more round between, maybe not because the PT, but seeing what they were going to look like in Charlotte between Aether Drift release and this are just there's a lot still to be said before we get to the point we're talking about, well, now that Underworld Breach is ready to be banned because we have a ban announcement coming up. There's just, it's a lot.
I'll go into this. I agree with everything that Abe said, but I will go into this saying that, like, I was not gonna play Eldrazi Ramp before I played it, but the new setup, like, discontinued. I was gonna play Hollow One, like, that is what I was gonna play, because of marauding. Is it Mako? Mako? I don't know. I was gonna play that. That's what I was gonna play, and I had to, like, switch pretty quickly, and I don't know that, like, it's a problem with, like, I don't know that they did the wrong thing, for what it's worth. Like, I actually think they did the right thing. But moving forward, like, if I'm going into Charlotte, like, I'm looking very heavily into the Hollow One deck, or other decks playing this card, because I believe that, like, it doesn't care about your graveyard as much as it cares about what you're doing, which I think is a benefit to this style of effect. And so, like, if we're thinking about what's going forward, I think Marauding Mako is, like, pretty high on my list.
Mason? Can I ask a question for you, Spencer?
Yeah.
Maybe the listener. So you mentioned you wanted to play Hollow One, which I think is fair. I think Hollow One maybe even might change to be a different color. Like that, I think that card's a huge get. But my question to you is, you felt like you did the right thing switching to Eldrazi. I think you also thought Breach was one of the best.
I thought it was the best deck. I thought Breach was.
So why did you not pick up Breach? I guess is my question.
Oh man, we're gonna get into this later, but I would not have played any of these decks. So I could have played any deck. Like, there's no question. Mm-hmm. I did not believe that I could get the Breach mirror matchup to where I wanted it. I think this is, like, a weakness of me and as, like, a lot of Venture players. There was another deck that I should have played that I did not play. But that's a good question. Like, why not play the best deck? I knew Breach was the best deck, but I didn't think the delta between I'll just say the decks that I thought about, like Breach, Boros, Eldrazi, and Titan. I thought were clearly the best four decks. Like, I didn't even think it was close. Especially after I couldn't play Hollow One. I was pretty sure that, like, those were the best four decks. It wasn't close. This was going to be one of my always approved moments, but I'll say it now. But, like, I have one of the people that, like, constantly top 8 challenges with Breach on my testing team. And we were supposed to do, like, a Breach day, and we didn't do it because I picked Eldrazi. And it was wrong, because I should pick it because I'm playing Emrakul. Like, I should be able to kill you with your own deck. and two, like, if I'm wrong, like, I should just be able to pick up Breach. So, I hope that answers your question.
I kind of want to push her a little. I don't know if it did. I think you kind of just told me what happened, but you didn't tell me what like the process was. I guess here's the question I'm trying to get to for the listener at home, right? Is like, what was the process of picking not the best deck, but the deck to beat the best deck?
Yeah, so
and I think you mentioned a little bit of it earlier about like the mirror.
No,
that was what I was really curious of.
That's the actual answer. Is like, I didn't want to play the mirror with the best deck, and I believe that my deck beat it. That's the answer.
Sure. Okay. Cool. I was just curious.
Do you still feel like, I mean, you're talking about what you'd think about going into Charlotte as being like Hollow One with Marani Miko and stuff. Do you still believe, like, given the win rate delta, I mean, I looking at the results from Charlotte specifically, I pulled up what I looked at on my flight home, which was Sierkowitz's thread on the data, showing that Breach, adjusted for mirrors, had a 54.5% win rate, and at a 95% confidence interval, I believe still had a higher win rate than like the next best deck did at its mean. So like, I think it was roughly like 52 was the low.
Yeah.
Do you still think that playing something entirely new would be your, like, personally, right? If you were playing Charlotte, do you think you would still put the time into something new, or you would put the hours in over this month to play Breach? Like, do you think things will actually? And either answer is fine. Just,
I don't know the answer, right? Like, I think that, like, I'm in two places. We'll get into this like later in the show, but like, I would either play Titan or Breach. Like that's I would end up where I believe the best thing was. And I mean, there's no. It's so funny to me. Like, is Breach gonna get banned before Charlotte? Like, no, there's no ban before then. Like, that's not happening. Like, no, I that's where I would end up. It'd be one of those two decks. I don't know if that answers your question. Like, I think
no, it does. I mean, I just want to make sure that, you know, looking at Charlotte ahead, right?
Yeah.
What would you do with your tournament equity? Because I think that's an important thing. Like,
yeah.
Would you are you really going to be, and would you really be dedicating your time to testing something new if you were under the same deadline and pressure? Because I think that's really important. Right?
We have 2 weeks, right?
Right. You've got 4.
Yeah, 4 weeks.
Is it 4?
Yeah, 4 weeks. It's the
that's actually a lot more than I thought.
It's double.
I would either way. It'd be on either Amulet or. Here's the thing, like, the graveyard hate that like is about to ensue could really hurt Hollow One. So like, if that is true, I won't play it. But between everything, like, I think there is like clearly a top 5 decks, but besides Hollow One, and Breach is like number 1 by far. And if you are not testing it and don't know how to play it, like, you're kind of messing up. So
yeah, I guess I'll just say that really quick. Heading to Charlotte, I'm commentating Charlotte as well, so you can see me in the booth there. But if I was playing Charlotte, I would play the Breach cards. If you look at the data, its worst matchup is the other Breach variants. When we look at all the top decks, it has a 54% win rate against Energy. It is a 53, against specifically Boros, and 54 versus the others. 57 against Eldrazi. Teamer 60 against Red Green misread there, and then Blink 52. Amulet has a 54% win rate, a 59% win rate against Murktide. And then it looks like there's another Eldrazi ramp where it has a worse win rate. I believe that's the CFT one, because there's 3 Eldrazi here, and CFT had a weird thing, but that is the first deck list that has a negative win rate. That isn't the mirror, and then everything else is above 50%. Until you hit Merfolk. which has a 38% win rate against Merfolk, which does make sense to me. I have played Merfolk versus the old Breach deck, and it was bad. It's also a sample size of 8, so not losing sleep over it. That is just a long way of saying I truly believe that if your goal is to make the Pro Tour and you want to, and that is like your main goal above all else, like you don't want to maximize for fun and you want to maximize for making the PT, I implore you to try and play the station deck. I understand it is an ungodly amount of money. I understand that it is scary to play the mirrors. I understand that it is a complicated deck to play through hate. I implore you to try to persevere through those things. The money thing you maybe just can't overcome, and I totally understand anyone who's like, yeah, you know what? I can't spend $2,000 to have a 4% better chance of making the PT.
Yeah.
But if all things are equal, my advice to you is to please play the deck that's most likely catching a Bane of some sort. It plays all the best cards in Modern. It can kill on turn 2. It can technically do it on turn 1. And it is so good at fighting through hate. I watched so many matches this weekend where the opponent had very good draws. To be fair, not their best, but very good draws. And the station player just beat them without, like, no worries.
I was that player several times.
No, I was going to say that, like,
really
I had a moment where I texted Abe where I was like, I just lost through 2 pieces of hate to... This was while Abe was playing Eldrazi, by the way. I was like, I just lost through 2 pieces of hate on turn 2. Like, I literally had 2 pieces of hate, and, like, they just beat me. Like, it wasn't even close. Like, they were like,
yeah.
And I will say, in addition, because I want to, like, echo what Mason is saying, that I think that the fact that Titan won both events is interesting. So
it won both. Do you mean the 10K?
Yeah.
Well, the 10K, everyone split except for the last 2 players. Like 6 people dropped. I had a couple friends in the top 10, the top 8.
Okay.
There was 1 match of Magic played. So I mean,
Titan still did win both events.
I will say, like,
yeah, I mean, technically, I guess it did. Yeah.
I will say, coming into
what
the
I
weekend,
said is not true, Mason.
Coming into the weekend, looking at the data from like Canadian RCs, I mean, I remember looking at it and seeing that Amulet Titan, likely because I think the people playing Titan at that event, especially including like Dom, who was an outlier in win rate in general in most rooms he's in with Titan, but did have one of the better win rates against Breach. And I think that's because Titan, similarly to Breach, is a difficult to interact with, turn 3 deck that's somewhat resilient because it has difficult pieces to interact with. So I honestly think that if there is a deck that if you were not going to be a Breach player, or you wanted to either, you had reasons to not play Breach because you don't want to play mirrors, even though I think the mirror is kind of overstated in how difficult or scary it is, but maybe it's built different. Or you can't find the cards, maybe you have the Amulet cards, or you have someone near you who does, and you can learn from them, or the resources out there for Amulet are a little bit easier for you to get into, and you're less worried about kind of the landscape shifting from under you, that you have reasons you want to play Breach. The player who won the USRC was my round 9 opponent, as a local in the Virginia scene, which is pretty closely tied to the Maryland scene, and he's just named it one trick, and the deck does really well, because I think that if we're looking at what matters in the format, it plays by those rules, and if you know what you're doing with it, you can make it all work. And I think, at least like week over week to this week, it certainly had the benefit of, I think, especially more people turning to things like Consign to beat Eldrazi as the big mana deck than kind of sticking to like Blood Moons and things like that. Like more and more of the hate that hates them is kind of disappearing. So yeah, I do think that kind of like those 2 decks, right? If you're not going to play Breach for whatever reason, Amulet is still another good choice. And I think that just kind of understanding the rules of the format of Modern right now are very different than what they were 3 weeks ago. Is probably the most important thing to take between events.
Does anybody have any final thoughts on this format before we do like our Patreon only episode for this? Nope. We're going.
Play Breach.
Play Breach.
Play Breach.
Man, we're gonna have such a fun time on the Patreon only episode. If you want to be on Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/ccmg. You can ask a question like Josh. Seriously, hashtag would that be good? Can we bring it back? No. But you said this. You said it, and then Abe was like, isn't this like short content? Like, can they not do this? And I don't promise anything. But maybe. Am I alone in doing this? Like, I'll do it, but like,
And just for listeners who haven't listened for a long time, there used to be a social media thing we did a long time ago where
Like-
it would be like the hashtag to engage with the podcast, kind of like a Patreon or a YouTube comment, but via Twitter. And that's what this person's referring to. And, we'll discuss it. We have a monthly podcast meeting we do, and we try to think about ways to improve the show. And I think Abe did have a good question of like, well, this sounds like something that's good for short form content. I think we should think about, is this something that adds value to the show and the listeners and enriches the thing? And we can figure that out. So, we'll have that content, that conversation about this content, and then bring it back to you all where we land.
I have the same
I will
question.
say,
am I alone? Like, am I going to do this alone?
I mean, we'll have to talk about it in the meeting as far as how this works logistically. But I will say that if you would like to be able to give us your one-off questions with hashtag would that be good, and then see us like answer through a TikTok or a YouTube short or like an Instagram reel or whatever it is we decide to be a good place to put it, sound off in the YouTube comments, baby.
Yeah.
Go down there and let us know. That's the only place that will accept any feedback about that or the Patreon Discord.
It's so funny.
Some would
There's
argue
like-
the YouTube
There's
comments
like
are
seven.
that version.
There's like 7 patrons who are like old enough to know this. They're like, "Oh, I know what hashtag would that be good is," and one of them.
This
asked
question's
this.
for you.
It's just funny.
The other 6.
Josh asked this like every year, which is who asked this. I don't know. Like, it will never be. We will read every hashtag. Would that be good on the show again? Like, that's never happening. But I think Abe's idea is pretty good.
Let us know. Hashtag would that be good?
Leave a comment on the YouTube. You can also check out your sponsor, Untapped.gg, or the swag store. I'm informed that I've never bought Mason's swag. So that's happening, even though he doesn't want it. So let's go! Mason, I need your stuff. We're going to buy you swag. You can also check out the swag store, whether it's like desk mats or t-shirts or life pads, whatever you need. Go on over, check it out. Always improving. I have a big one this week. I kind of saved it for this, but I want to talk about eating your vegetables. And I think I texted you, Abe, like, I don't know, like, I either text you or talked to you about this, where I was like, I should just be playing the new Amulet deck. Like, I know it's good. I know it's fast. I know that it, like, does the things that it does. I'm pretty sure it was you. You're not the only one, though. I, like, talked to, like, 5 people about this. And it's funny because I have been anti not eating your vegetables with the amulet like a lot of times. Like, it's whatever. But the new amulet deck is like so different from the one 8 months ago. It's like kind of weird. And I just didn't want to do it. But I knew I was wrong. Like, I knew that I should do it. I think that, Abe, you and I were sitting next to each other. I think it was round 2. I think it was 0-2, just lost to Burn. And I was like, I knew I should have played it. Like, I knew. And you were like, well, yeah, it's like you knew then. You should have just done it.
That does sound like me. That does sound like what I would say.
And what's...
I
go ahead.
You go. Sorry, I finished.
No, go ahead.
I just think, and this is like a holding the mirror up. I've known you now long enough to feel really comfortable saying this. This is a classic Spencer.
Oh yeah,
And you did it in
I
Smash
agree.
too.
I
Where
agree.
I think you put so much weight on the decision of stuff.
Yeah,
And something I've learned recently from League of Legends is just like, no, pick someone and play 50 matches with them, which in League is like, playing like magic matches, sometimes
Yeah.
even longer. And it's like, then figure out if you like it or not. And I think you like to be like, well, this or that, and you did it in Smash a lot too, where like you really like I think it was K. Rool was the character. You
That's
picked
my
up pretty
main.
quickly. Yeah, well, yeah, but so was Samus and Wolf and
Yeah.
and you like switched up a bunch because you were like, well, this character isn't like maybe the best, so I should try to do something.
Oh yeah,
different.
it's
And I think,
K-Rool's like a good example for what it's worth.
Mhm.
Where it's like, yeah, this is my main. Like I should do this.
Yeah.
And
I think you should just trust yourself more.
yeah,
Like-
I agree. I think that Mason's 100% correct here. Like I knew like pretty early that I was supposed to like go eat my vegetables and play the new Titan deck. And listen, like you'd be like, what does that mean? Like what does eat your vegetables mean? But like Titan is a lot of like learning yourself and like learning the new stuff. I coached people and directed them to the new Dom stuff while I didn't pick up the deck. Like I was wrong. Like I don't know. Like I think it's easy to like not do it because that 2 hours, like I legitimately believe this, by the way. I think like 2 to 3 hours of like learn the basics is not fun. It's not fun. Like, but everything after that is fun. And I didn't want to do the not fun stuff and like go eat my kale, eat my Brussels sprouts. Like, I just didn't want to do it. And I was mistaken. And I knew after I talked to Abe in like, I think round 2, it was like, yeah, why didn't you do this? And I was like, I don't know. What's so funny is that it won both events, but like, I don't know. Like, I don't know why I didn't do it. There's not a reason other than that. And it's not the only time I didn't eat my vegetables. Like, I want to be clear that like, I played Eldrazi and I had one of the like top 25 Reach players as my best friend that has, won challenges with the deck, and I did not take a moment to like play Breach with them to know how to be himself with Emrakul. Like I didn't do it. Like I didn't put in the work that I'm supposed to do.
Wait, so if you were to Emrakul me, you don't think you could figure it out?
I do think that I could, which is why I didn't do it.
Okay. Just the way you said that there, I was like, I think you had to learn more about the deck.
I do believe that I would kill you.
Okay.
But I could have been like, yeah, I'm 100% to kill. You know what I mean? There's no cost for me to just like play a day with Matt. I don't know.
I think the real reason to play Breach matches with Matt would probably have been to learn how to play the Breach deck.
Yeah, I agree
I'm
too.
not gonna lie. I feel like we're talking about eating our vegetables here. You're like, I could have been eating my
yeah, I
my
probably would have
spinach.
ended up there. You know
Yeah,
what?
like, really, I should
You
be
know what,
eating
Abe?
super greens.
Shut up.
Like-
No, I actually love this because I was going to say it and Abe just said it. Spencer's out here sneaking a candy bar while he's talking about eating his vegetables. He's like, I could have
Like,
learned how
I should have really eaten my apple slices, guys. I should have eaten my vegetables.
Yeah.
Like, no, man. Like,
Hey,
Grab
one of the
fork,
best
dig in,
25 Breach players in the world is my best friend.
Yeah, so why didn't you
yeah,
learn to
you,
play
I don't know!
To bump them off the list.
I know because you like to be different and you like to feel like you have an edge. It's okay just to play the best thing, Spencer. You're good enough. Just play. I think if Spencer plays Breachy day 2s easily on 0 reps, like literally a
To be
2 hour
fair,
phone
if I
call,
don't
Matt, I
mulligan
think you
to
day 2
fucking
Breach 90% of the time.
If I don't mulligan to 4 times, I also day 2. But, yeah.
I don't believe that as nearly. I think if Spencer goes in like an AI time machine and we have Spencer play 100 RCs, I think the Breach Spencer is the one that makes it.
That's probably true. I don't want to. I should have. I knew I should have too. I think that's like eating your vegetables is like. I think you guys are right. Like, I don't know.
Spencer, next time though, I don't want to next RC. I don't want to hear any eat your vegetables talk. You better be eating.
I'll eat them.
I want to point out that Spencer said this too for standard, and this is coming from Love Buddy. This is
no, I know. I want you to succeed.
Yeah. I think.
Wait,
I think
didn't say
a good
this in San Diego though.
No, but in San Diego, you mentioned how like you locked in. I can't remember exactly, but it was something similar to this of like you didn't put enough time exploring the other stuff that you thought was good.
Oh, the tricolor decks.
Yeah, like this. I believe it was like the Fables. It was the. Oh no, I remember what it was. I remember exactly what it was. It was putting Fable in the white deck because Sam Black did it, and you had the exact same thought, but you said no, don't worry about it. And I think for what it's worth, like testing the weird stuff counts as like eating your vegetables when like you're a mono.
No, I think that's a good point.
And I would implore you, and I actually like want to put this challenge out there to everyone who like feels like they might be resonating because I think this is a very common thing, Spencer. For the next like tournament you're playing, just lock in on whatever everyone is saying, what the data says is the best deck, and just play it like head down. You know what I mean? Like, so let's pretend you had like a 1K at Oasis Games this weekend. You would play Breach regardless.
No, I would play Amulet, but.
Well, that's not what Mason's advice is.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
Well, Amulet also has a losing win rate against Breach across all.
Did it really?
Yes, that's every deck. Well, I read it earlier, and it wasn't close. And Dom talked about how he probably overestimated the matchup, and House of Mana talked about how he lost the matchup a bunch, and then the Peter guy talked about how lucky he got in a bunch of spots.
Yes, he did get very lucky against me. I'm not going to talk about it here, but he did.
and he admitted to it too. I mean, he played. I watched his matches. I think he played really great on every match that I commentated. Yeah, he was playing great, and I know some people who know him, and I think he's very good. I don't want to like downplay that. But to his own admission, he mentioned like I had some very fortunate spots, and I watched one of his matches when Abe was in the feature match area for coverage. You can see me behind Abe because I'm watching his match most of the time. But I was like ping ponging between the two because there was a lot of thinking in Abe's game, and I watched him and like definitely had like some really weird and good draws occur. But like he played those weird draw part things well, and this is all simply to say. It didn't act like the data says it's not good, which you can not trust the data. I think it's fine to be like, well, I think it plays out this way. It's really close. We run it 1,000 times. If it ends up being 51, 52. What I'm saying is I feel like Spencer, and maybe this isn't true, and maybe I'm just like misreading, but I think the Spencer doesn't trust himself to play the best deck in the mirror. And I think Spencer's good enough to do it. And so Spencer should do it. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of people like that.
I asked Matt for that testing day where like, we just play like 3 leagues with 3 different amulet lists. Or sorry, not amulet. Like I asked for it and I like didn't do it because I was lazy. And I think Mason's right. I agree.
If I can go next in Always Improving, because I think it's gonna go. My Always Improvement this week was that I just trusted others.
The data.
I just didn't do all the things that I thought were right. I listened to the Hive Mind because I knew that while I was well prepared to play the matches in the event, I was not at a proficiency to really make deck building decisions at a high level, especially with something which was clearly being refined by very good players in the Breach deck, which is why I wound up playing the Systematic 74 of the 75, the Systematic deck, and also why I stuck to their philosophies and their reasonings that I understood from watching their, reading their content and reading the other, Alex Rohan's guide, and just trusted what all of these other good players were saying, and then trusted in myself to be good enough to do the rest. Like, I think it's almost like, especially just think about your Always Improving mode, Spencer, of like eating your vegetables. I did. Right, like I could have been like, I should be playing for Saga. I shouldn't be playing for Preordain.
Yeah.
Like I could have done all these things to change and think that I knew better. but I just trusted that I didn't, and was willing to say that, if I was right, I could be right in Charlotte. And I don't have regrets about my decision. I think it really is the reason I had such a strong finish. Why I was only one match away from the PT was, I think if I actually put in even more time, which I didn't give myself, and unfortunately just some things that happened in the week prior and surrounding life took away some hours that I would have spent with a little bit more intentional practice of the breach deck. And I think I would have been able to turn, I would hope that I'd be able to turn one of those losses into a win and get back to the PT. But
you'd top an 8, as they say.
I would have topped a 32. I don't think I would have top 8 with my
top
losses.
an 8, as Abe said.
Top the 8, yeah.
Top. I don't know that it is the bottom, but I will say that I don't know, you kept a really good head. I remember your first loss, and I just want to say this, but like before you go on, where you were like, that match was winnable, and I made a mistake miscounting my mana. And we don't get into like the specifics, but like I was really proud of you for like recognizing that you like miscounted because of Metalcraft, and like knowing that like had you taken like 2 other lines while you were still in a disadvantaged position, you could have done it. And I think that like a lot of people be like, oh, I punted, I don't need to know like how the rest would play out. That was not your approach to that game. You were specifically like, oh, I punted, here's how it would have played out if possible. And I don't know, I think that's good.
Yeah, I think I had a really good weekend. Honestly, like it's hard for me to be upset with it. And as much as like, I think I was joking with one of the judges used to play the SCGs with us, Steven Kurziak, where I was like, yeah, I don't know, I like was one match away from the Pro Tour, and I'm not very beat up about it. I feel pretty good about how I played and pretty good about how I did, and I know that I could have done better, and I want to do better in Charlotte, but I know that's going to come by just continuing to do the same. And like, is that I was only gonna the Lutri Pact was only gonna be in place if I'd qualified for the PT, because my friend Joel, who has the Lutri Pact pending with me, we couldn't do it until he has someone else to go to the PT with. It was just
like a go.
Hold on, Spencer, if I can finish.
Yeah.
What I was saying to Steven was just that I felt like I was in this place of like kind of a weird spot for a lot of players who grind a lot, of like being that close and not being super torn up about it. And I don't know, I think that just what you mentioned there of my approach to thinking about that game really is reflective of the game that I've cultivated especially even in the post-COVID era, of like how I'm approaching the game mentally. And it's I don't know, it's really paying off, and I feel like this event was really great. And I just wanted to say that as part of my always improving, that like I think that if I continue to do that, I'm hoping I'll continue to see the success. What was your question, Spencer?
I was just going to ask how much the GoFundMe needs to get to for the Lutri deck.
There's not a number. It's really just about the vibes and about already being qualified for the Pro Tour. Next time I'm already qualified for the Pro Tour and I'm playing in RC, it's very likely
we'll
that
Lutri
if it's in the
format. The vibes. We'll do the GoFundMe.
I'll take the money, I guess.
You're like, I mean, no. Like,
there was no GoFundMe involved. This was just me for the love of the game. But
Mason, obviously, you're like, you're doing Charlotte. So, like, what do you hope to see as a commentator?
Well, my always improving moment. Because that's where we're at right now, right? I mean,
no, absolutely. Like,
yeah. Sorry. I guess let's pause real quick. I'm confused. What are you talking about with Charlotte?
I did not think that you had one, so I was changing the.
No, I have one
moment. So go ahead.
Okay, I'll give a pause so we can edit here. Yeah. So my always improving moment does come from something I mentioned earlier in the show, but I just wanted to reiterate because I do think it's important, and that is the practice for the commentary. I've got a lot of very nice words from people on social media, and those are heavily appreciated. I also got a really funny hater response where I used the Kendrick thing from the Super Bowl and joked about force figuring, and someone replied with, in the spirit of Kendrick being a generational hater, I hated your commentary. And I think they very much meant it, looking at their account. And I wanted to say, one, I found that hilarious. And two, you know what? I'm glad a lot of people liked it. I'm sure some people didn't, and I'm working really hard to keep getting better at it. And I think if I hadn't put in those hours I mentioned at the top of the show, this weekend would have been a lot worse. I think it would have been very easy for me to rest on my laurels and be like, I was good enough to make the RC. I've known Carmen for years. I've done, 3 other RCs before this. I've commentated hundreds of matches of Magic. I've studied this a lot. I've practiced a ton in the past. I should just chill. I've been working a lot already as is. I think if I had just let those thoughts win and not actually just put my nose to the grindstone and work on little things like that, I think those little things really help make the show. Because I do think big picture wise, I didn't really work on a bunch of stuff in that regard, but sort of, polishing the edges and getting a little cleaner. I think that stuff really helps, even if it isn't perceived in the same way as maybe like the way I talk about a deck or something like that. And so I just wanted to really shut that out, as I've been trying to get a lot better about meaningfully practicing stuff in general and finding it to be very helpful. Whether that's, been Magic or League of Legends or commentary, I found it to just be great to actually sit down and do really hard focus for a period of time and then not worry about it, and like push that aside and then relax afterwards, but just, I think I find myself when I actually do it, I feel better and I seem to be doing better with stuff too. So that's my always improving moment, was just really putting in the hours, which is very similar to eating the vegetable Spencer, which I thought was funny. We did not talk about this beforehand.
No, I think that you and Carmen had like maybe the best chemistry I've ever seen on coverage. And
thank you.
I know that people messaged me specifically to say that. And I'm really proud of you, man.
Thank you. Yeah, we put a lot of work in. We both really care about bringing good coverage to people. I don't know. There was a weird moment where Cedric and P. Sully were there and just like got up after a round and was talking to them and Overturf and Corey, and it was just like, this is so weird. But like, I am getting to like hopefully have that awesome moment that really ignites a spark for someone in competitive Magic, like they did for me all those years ago. And I hope that, if I get that for one person, it was worth all the hellish travel at 3 a.m. waking up that I did to get there. So,
yeah. If you love the show, you can go to patreon.com/CMTG, become a patron of the show. You can also check our sponsor, Untapped GG, or the Swag Store. Those are all in the show notes. With that being said, you can join the conversation on the Patreon Discord, the public Discord, the YouTube comments, the Twitter. It's going to be fun,
People can find me over at Blue Sky, at More Nothings. You can also find me on Twitter, More Nothings, although I use that a lot less now. Or you can email me at morenothings@gmail.com if you're looking for coaching. Or you can DM me on either of those other platforms as well. Probably we'll have maybe a little bit of time between now and Chicago for 1 or 2 more people. So you're welcome to do that. I will also, I'm hoping it'll be live at the time of this recording, but this week I'll be going on MTG Grindcast to talk about my RC in a little bit more detail. If you want to hear kind of the tournament reporty stuff and maybe some more specifics about Breach, and maybe even learn a bit more about, like, I don't know, my thoughts on like Breach mirrors and stuff. I know that we're going to talk a little bit more about that on that episode, so you can find me there this week. That's about it. Where can they find you, Mason?
Find me on twitter.com at Mason E. Clark. All my social media is that as well. So if you want to find me elsewhere, you'll probably find me with that. If you want to reach out for coaching, you can do that on the Twitter or via my email, masonclark@gmail.com. And you can technically follow me on Twitch. I want to do some more stuff. It's hard, especially now with the commentary stuff cutting in even more. But you can check that out, twitch.tv/TheMasonClark. I have an idea for something I kind of want to do, but we'll see if it actually ends up happening. And really quickly, I am going to be cutting down on coaching hours starting pretty soonish here. So I'm kind of giving a call for people to get in while the getting's good. So if you were on the fence, send me an email and basically we can have a conversation or a DM. You don't have to commit to anything or whatever. Just if that's something you're interested in. I've had a couple messages since the RC about like maybe wanting to, and if anyone reaches out before I sort of shut the door on like cutting the hours down dramatically, I'm just gonna like not worry about you because you had intent. I just don't want to kind of rug pull people who are maybe like, oh, this has been this way for a long time, blah blah blah. So I'm gonna probably mention this for the next week or two on the podcast. So, anyways, there's that. Spencer, where can they find you?
You can find me every week on this show, Constructive Criticism, as well as every week on the Need to Nerd podcast. I also do Constructive Clash with Matt Kling, former GP top 8 competitor, here on the YouTube channel. That's the best way to see me. Give us a like, give us a follow. I do have a small amount of coaching available right now. Just email me at spencerhalland@gmail.com. And yeah, that's the best place. You can like, subscribe, and comment. As Abe always says on the podcast, because he's the proponent of this, like, leave a comment. Tell us what you hate. Tell us what you love. Tell us what you want to see next.
Tell us what you ate for breakfast. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. The comments actually do the most for the show possible on YouTube, and we really appreciate it. And we'll see you all next week with a brand new episode of Constructive Criticism.
Magic, 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 magic.